Hey everyone, today I'm looking into modding my XM1 so that it can perform like an XM1r. It already does, but the slight differences are in the feet and the switches. And I can't get an XM1r because it's not in stock, and even if it is in stock, it's from some shady person, shady seller on Newegg. And the matte black one has a $40 shipping price tag, which is ridiculous, and matte black is definitely the only color you should be getting on the XM1r. So I'm just going to open up my original XM1 and mod the switches, and yeah, that's basically an XM1r. So taking it apart, just heat up the mouse feet. I'm using a hairdryer on a pretty warm setting. It should come off pretty easily. These are actually already core pads, so they're a bit more difficult to take off. I take them off really slowly, as you can see, because I don't want to ruin the adhesive and make the adhesive bunch up and not be flat. I want to reapply these and keep them flat so I can use them properly. Now you just go ahead and unscrew everything. There's just 4 screws, and yeah, props to Endgame Gear because the shell pops right off. There's no clamps or anything, just the screws. The only thing I do wish that was different about the disassembly process was having the screws not under the feet, because like I showed you, I had to be really careful to take off my core pads so I can reuse them. On a mouse like the Viper Mini, you should know that the screws are not actually under any mouse feet, so you can take it apart a million times without even touching the feet. So here we're starting the desoldering process. You just go ahead and take your soldering iron, you heat it to around 400. I think I have mine on exactly 400. You heat up the existing solder and then you use the solder pump to suck it out. Now it won't take out everything, right, because the mouse holes are so small as opposed to keyboard switches. So this is where I'm just showing you need to take tweezers and get in the holes of the actual mouse micro switch. And then I take the soldering iron again, I kind of point it diagonally, as you can see, and get heat on all 3 pins so that I can just kind of wiggle it out. Just be careful here. I don't know if you just noticed, but I just melted the corner of the sensor ring, so make sure you don't touch the sensor ring. I melted the corners, so none of the performance was affected, but if you melt anything in the middle, you'll probably get a fucked up sensor. Here I'm doing the same thing, except you see my solder's on the other side, so there's no point, or there's no chance of melting the sensor ring. Just be careful with that. And here are the switches I was considering. This is the KL 8.0. Also considering the TTC Gold Dustproof. Maybe to try something different, unlike Endgame Gear with their lineup of mice. But I ended up going with the 8.0s anyway. I just wanted to show you that you can do a little test run of your switches, right? You can just put them in the socket and then put the PCB in. Don't screw anything on. Don't put the cable or anything. Just put the shell on top. And try to squeeze it together as tightly as you can while clicking it, and you can get a little test run of your switches. This is how I determined that I wanted to use the 8.0s over the TTC Gold Dustproofs. Now soldering it back on, I used my soldering iron holder, the base of it, because you want to push down pretty hard because you want the switch to be flush with the base of the PCB. That's just not going to happen because you have to solder it upside down, so you have to press on something. I recommend just getting a clamp. I mean, even desoldering is way easier with a clamp. I didn't even use a clamp, so because I don't have one. But yeah, you can make it work. Just be careful. Again, your soldering iron should be 350 to 400. Yeah, that's a good safe range so that you won't mess up your PCB. So at this point you want to plug it in with the cable and make sure everything works. Make sure your clicks work, make sure everything else works, like the scroll wheel, scroll button, the side buttons. For reassembly, you see that the cable actually goes through the switch. It goes in between the switch and the scroll wheel, and it sits quite snug, and you want to make sure that's snug because the top shell might interfere with that. So putting it back together, screw everything back in, and now I'm just wiping down the leftover residue from the core pads. Again, the core pads have like really weird residue where it'll change shape, it'll stay on your mouse if you take them off. So yeah, that's why I was so careful in taking off the feet. So yeah, now you basically have a mouse that performs like the XM1r. The XM1r has new feet, I have core pads. XM1 has 8.0s, I also have 8.0s. They're a bit stiffer because Endgame Gear actually tensioned them and made them a bit lighter apparently, but it doesn't bother me too much. And here's a sound test.